Friends, we gather together this afternoon to celebrate the life and to honor the memory of Norman Sigel. Norman's family so very much appreciates your presence here with them this afternoon. As you know, at difficult times in our lives, though we may not have answers to our ultimate questions, we certainly do have a kind of answer with our presence to loved ones, to put our arms around them, to express solidarity and love. These are the measures that begin to heal us. Thank you so much for being here. Adonai ma'adam v'teda ehu ben enosh v'chashvehu. O Lord, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, in the evening it fades and it withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, you mortal creatures." Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. The author of the first of the Bible's 150 Psalms describes for us in language that is both poignant and succinct the nature of the good life and the fruits of that life. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked or taken the path of sinners or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, whose foliage never fades, and whose fruit always flourishes. Let us take comfort now together in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Kohelet, the author of the biblical book of Ecclesiastes, reminds us that for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Norman Sigel died this past Thursday evening at the age of 94. He lived a long and a richly experienced life, and those who loved him will miss him. His last weeks were difficult ones for Norman, and we are glad that he is now at peace. Norman was born and raised in Elyria, Ohio. As the only Jewish child in his elementary school, he was the object of the cruel anti-Semitic taunts of his peers, who seemed to have inherited and then mindlessly to have mimicked that age-old poison, saying to him, "You're the Jew, and we don't like you." And it hardly needs saying that young Norman was deeply wounded by this. In 1945, when Norman was 17 years old, he convinced his father to sign papers so that he could join the Navy. When asked why he did this, when doing so meant that he would miss his high school graduation, Norman responded simply, "It is the right thing to do." And so he served in the Navy for a year and a half. And while he was on board a ship on the way to Japan, the atomic bomb was dropped. Quite an experience for a young man. After being honorably discharged, Norman began his very successful career as a manufacturer's rep for Japanese electronic equipment companies. In that capacity, he spent a great deal of time on the road in his Ohio and Michigan territories and to other places as well. And in the process, he would put 50 or 60,000 miles a year on his car. But being on the road didn't keep him from coming home regularly midweek to be with his family. Now, when I met with Norman's vibrant family yesterday afternoon, I asked them to describe their husband and father-in-law and grandfather and uncle to me, at which point his family literally tripped over each other, pouring forth one accolade after another. Norman, they said, was energetic, consistent and dependable, jovial and witty, loving, fashionable, hardworking, dedicated, passionate, and deeply emotional. "I could never keep up with him," his adored wife, Dolly, exclaimed. In a word, Norman Sigel had a strong moral compass, and he was comfortable with himself. And perhaps most of all, Norman was a people person. He simply loved being in the presence of others, and others loved being with him. People of all ages, with all kinds, naturally gravitated toward him because he was warm and caring, and because he gave love just as easily as he received it. He was, in the words of one of his grandchildren, a classic extrovert who could make friends with anyone, who easily engaged with strangers, and with his easy wit and ever-ready smile, he effortlessly penetrated the barriers that so often exist between people. And talking about Norman's smile, the apt emissary of his soul. After his family and I completed our conversation last evening, I sat with a couple of them looking at a gallery of pictures that his daughter-in-law Jessica had compiled. And one of the things that stood out in picture after picture was Norman's smile. Even before he was actually smiling, you could see the twinkle, the animation in his eyes. If not actually smiling, then that smile was never far off. Moreover, very few of these pictures had Norman alone within its frames. Always with others, with his grandchildren in the water, a gathering of old friends, celebrating with his family, picture after picture. And though these are still photos, there is nothing still about them. It's as if Norman was being captured in the middle of an activity, in the middle of a conversation or a moment of conviviality. Norman always in emotional motion, that the stillness of those photos did nothing to conceal. And throughout his life, Norman both rejoiced in the friendships of many decades, while also regularly cultivating new relationships. As, for example, in his middle 60s, he developed a whole new coterie of friends with whom he regularly met for coffee and conversation. And so it is hardly surprising that when Norman died, so many people from all his many circles reached out with their sadness and their condolences, while also with their reminiscences about the times that they had spent with Norman. with the laughter and love and Norman's irrepressible spirit. At this point, I want to say a few words about the relationship that Norman and Dolly shared for more than 62 years. As I learned yesterday afternoon when I was with the family, but also through my conversations with Dolly over the past few weeks, Norman and you, Dolly, were a perfect match. You had so many interests in common: travel, or as you put it, tons of travel. In addition to the theater, the symphony, collecting art, skiing, socialization, with the many friends and couples that you had in common. And you mentioned the many completely open and intimate conversations you had always had together, and most especially in the final weeks of his life. A real and deep compatibility, a rare blessing to both of you. And I learned from you, Dolly, about Norman's very last moments in which you and Glenn and Eric were actually holding Norman in your arms as, with a tear forming in one of his eyes, Norman passed from this world. How blessed for all of you that you had these cherishable moments together, and how blessed for Norman to feel this love in his final moments. Norman is survived by his wife Dolly, by his sons Eric and Glenn, by his daughters-in-law Elaine and Jessica, and by his brother David, by his grandchildren Mark, Matthew, Max, Ari, Talia, and Zev, by his brother and sister-in-law Jerry and Beth, brother-in-law and sister-in-law Jerry and Beth, and by his nieces and nephews, Sue and Richard, Thomas, Elizabeth and Tim, Rosalind and David, Abby and Jason, and Neil and Allie. He was predeceased by his parents, Ruth and Max, by his sister Sarah, by his brother-in-law Hy, and his sister-in-law Marilyn. Norman Sigel lived a long and a blessed life. He touched so many people with his vibrant spirit, with his warm smile, and his boundless capacity to give love. And he was especially blessed because he received so much love in return. The love for him from all of you that will never diminish and will never die. Zichrono livracha, the memory of Norman Sigel will always be our blessing. Amen. And I want to call on several people who will speak about the life, the qualities, the accomplishments of Norman Sigel. First of all, his sons, Eric and Glenn.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was beautiful. And I think we only overlapped by a couple little themes, so we'll see how this works out. First off, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here, for expressing your love for my dad. It's really been remarkable with Facebook and all the electronic outlets that we have to see how many postings there were, the support, the love that you provided, and the stories that are just out there electronically, I think almost summarizes this whole funeral. So thank you all for that, and thanks for those who have been helping us in these days. Norman, brother, Sonny, Uncle Norm, Storm and Norman, Grandpa, Dad. You all know our dad by one of these affectionate terms, and for each one of you, that meant something special every time you uttered those words. Though we often take those simple words for granted, no matter how many millions of times in your life that they were spoken, it's time to celebrate what those words meant and what that relationship was and the lessons we learned. There are so many ways my dad touched our lives and so many memories we have. And by the stories he told and the way he lived life, he taught us all how to be in this world. The tone was set early on. Certainly all that know my dad know that he grew up on a farm in Elyria with his parents, Max and Ruth, and his siblings, Sarah and David. They lived through the Depression, but gave generously to their entire community by feeding all that couldn't find food. He faced adversity in the anti-Semitism he experienced, but learned how to respond and grow stronger from it. He loved to goof around, and in his loving relationship with his brother, used to have massive tomato fights in the garden. He made money at a young age by bunching asparagus at 10 cents a bunch and taking it to market all before school. And to debunk a myth that we always teased him about, he did not ride a horse to school. Though he did start driving at age 11 and had his own car by 13. A tradition was created when Glenn and I, and then most of his grandkids, started to drive around 13 as well. He taught us so much, both through his words, but more by example. Dedication, commitment, honor all come to mind. We think he was probably about the youngest surviving World War II vet as he volunteered for the Navy, entering in the spring of '45 when he was still 17, as the rabbi has said. He simply said it was the right thing to do. He was on a ship headed to Japan when the bombs dropped, likely the main reason why he survived the war and that we are all here today. Nevertheless, he's still experienced some drama. While he was painting his ship in Japan, in Tokyo Harbor, he fell off scaffolding about 100 feet into the harbor. Luckily, someone saw him fall. I know my kids love this story, and in fact, at times, proudly put on his Navy uniform to regale in the notion that Grandpa went to war. He taught us all how to be good people. He was dedicated to his career, working hard as a manufacturer's rep, showing us the diligence and the joy there is in having a career he was passionate about. Of course, there were the financial rewards, which he loved to share with us when he made a good sale, but the personal connection that I think really drove him to do what he did. Constantly meeting new people, sharing what he learned from those interactions, we became familiar with so many folks and their stories from all over Ohio and beyond. He won numerous awards as the top salesman for the main company he worked for, JVC. Many of his friends and our friends benefited from his job by getting the latest stereo equipment at a great price. In fact, in his dying days, we were talking about life. He shared that life was fabulous, and one of the primary things he recalled was being a manufacturer's rep as one of those fabulous things. What a way to reflect on pursuing what really mattered to you by having such a thought in your final days. Another way Dad showed us how to live the right way was his relationship he had with his in-laws, Mark and Edith. Aside from happily spending Friday nights at my grandparents' place, he was always running over there to fix things, help them out. I heard over and over again what a great son-in-law he was, and his boys, that's us, both attempt to carry on that tradition. One of the best decisions my dad made was to go to Ohio State. He became a Buckeye for life, setting up one of the only points of contention in his relationship with my mom, who, as you know, graduated from Michigan. I fell for the Buckeye Kool-Aid, while Glenn felt sorry for my mom and became a Michigan fan. That house-divided tradition was passed on as Elaine, my wife, is a Wolverine as well. Who knows if that marital rivalry will continue with the next generation, but Ari in particular should be put on notice. And Mom, Dad taught us and a whole host of others out there how to be a great partner and create and grow a loving and supportive family full of respect and caring. Recalling the times that he nearly broke his back with his kids between his legs going up a rope tow. That's an old-fashioned ski lift for those who don't know. The utter laughter around the table with all your boys rolling on the floor, showing us how to assume responsibility by doing chores around the house. Mom, he let us, and you, know all the time how amazing you are. Always marking how lucky he was To marry such a beautiful woman, such a smart person, his adoration for you continued unabated up until the last moments. Together, you two are truly a remarkable couple, serving as role models as to how a couple should be, really with such stability and lack of controversy to the point of being boring. Glenn complained even at one point after coming back from college about how boring our lives were compared to so many peers who had so many typical family issues. In fact, Dad was so nice and considerate, you told us that you would specifically plan to pick a fight with him periodically in order to spice things up. Your relationship has really set the bar for so many of us. In that same vein, Dad served as a role model and mentor to so many people, some of you in this room, whether you were family, friend, neighbor, facing challenges or not. He counseled, listened, offered advice to help dozens out there in need of a bit of guidance to help get back on the right footing. Of course, Dad valued family. He so deeply cared about the well-being of all beyond his immediate clan. He developed unique, special relationships with so many, his sister Sarah and brother-in-law Hai, his brother David, who even into the last moments would talk every day, being incredibly silly and joking on the phone, talking about stuff I can't even repeat in public, and his sister-in-law Marilyn, his little kid brother-in-law Jerry, all his nieces and nephews, Sue, Liz, Thomas, Roz, Neil, and Abby, great nephews and nieces, and even the youngest additions to our family, 4 great-great-nephews. Your good fortune to call him Uncle Norm, I know means so much to you and meant so much to him. So many memories between the farm, the boat, the garden, but of course probably the epitome of all of it was Thanksgiving. The gathering of family, the fun, the silliness, the family bonding, much of it centered on the traditional carving of the turkey, which Dad so masterfully crafted, and everyone tries to emulate. Glenn, for sure, has figured this out, as he certainly can carve a mean turkey. I can't so much. We as sons always knew how proud Dad was of us. He would encourage us to pursue our dreams, make sure we were happy. We almost always could do no wrong, though, as you know, Dad did display a lot of emotion. One time, Glenn, being his mischievous self, did something that deserved a spanking. He cleverly said he had to go to the bathroom first, patted his tush with towels. The spanking came to the sound of a dull thud. The whole family started cracking up, and thus end the punishment. In talking about our dad just last night with our close friend Susan, she remarked that there were very few men that continued to kiss their sons throughout their lives. I had never really even given much mind to that because I thought that's the way things were done. But I guess that really was a reflection of how close we were. Though us sons were the apple of his eye for a good while, that certainly began to change once Mark, his first grandson, was born. He took such delight in his growing brood. He was able to develop a unique relationship with each grandchild, relishing in all the developmental milestones from Britain baby namings to now 5 B'nai mitzvahs. They all have special memories and bonding times with Grandpa. Mark is going to speak for his family, but to mention just a couple memories from my kids. Ari recalls what an amazing time he had when his 92-year-old grandpa tagged along to the Football Hall of Fame. Ari and Zev got to hear direct accounts from someone who actually witnessed the Browns winning a championship, which made the Hall of Fame trip actually come to life. Talia remembers the quiet mornings on Warrington when just she and Grandpa were the only ones up. Grandpa welcoming her with a cheers as they chatted quietly around the breakfast table. Zev remembers when just 3.5 years ago he came to Cleveland just with me for Max's bar mitzvah party. We went condo shopping. He was right on with saying that the first condos we saw weren't right. But with the third one, he said, "Grandpa, this one is great." And thus their new home was discovered. Of course, the growing brood would not have been made possible without Dad's daughters-in-law. Dad was so thrilled to add Jessica and then Elaine to the mix, so relieved that his sons found partners who would be there for them, so he didn't have to worry about us anymore. Over the years, his relationship with both of them grew to be mutually loving and supportive, and he couldn't have been happier to have them in his life. Vodka. Just hearing that word, I think, epitomizes my dad's most lasting impression on all that had the privilege of knowing him. More than anything, my dad has taught us all how to live life. He was the ultimate Energizer bunny. He had an incredible amount of fun with everything he did, approaching the things he cared about with passion and energy. He just embraced the world and what it had to offer. His gardening, which he took so much pride in and won numerous awards for his backyard, to skiing, from teaching us as young kids to our epic trips to Holiday Valley and to Snowmass, my personal introduction to Colorado. All of us still ski a run called the Burn and think of my dad since it was his favorite. To boating, which perhaps stemmed from the Navy. As a bachelor in the 50s, he had a boat on Lake Erie, and when he had the opportunity to rekindle that love of water, he did so when we were teenagers. I'm guessing there were thousands of trips to Berlin Reservoir. I know there are truly hundreds of us that got to enjoy the boat and still do, with Glenn carrying on the tradition, learning how to water ski and experience something they may never had if it weren't for our dad. To travel. Dad and then Mom together loved to travel. It all started during wild bachelor days hanging out in Cuba, which eventually led to traveling to 35 different countries. Epic trips to Asia with just Mom alone, to Europe with the four of us, and then venturing to Cambodia and South Africa as he matured in life. Of all the places he went, his true happy place was Treasure Cay, Bahamas. Introduced to us by our close friends, the Jacksons, we as a family, and then with Mom later on, probably went there 30 times, and he found true peace at a place called The Point, with gorgeous green water and white sand. Though that was his place of zen, he also, of course, had a whole bunch of live-it-up partying places, drinking vodka with Donna on their patio, dancing at a bar ironically named, and I'm not kidding, the Tipsy Sigel, and that was only in the Bahamas, which was just an extension of how he regularly engaged in life. He had a ton of friends and kept making new ones along the way, from his younger bachelor friends who became lifelong friends to the core group of families and couples who he and my mom, and of course us, bonded with. They were close to so many, which is truly a remarkable demonstration of lifelong bonding that is the envy of many. To his newer group, known as the Coffee Bunch, or Coffee Group, that he connected with probably 30 years ago, which has endured to this day. To music, Dad played the trumpet as a kid. His love of music grew when he moved to the big city and started going to the orchestra. Classical music became one of his passions, always playing on the stereo at home, Mom and Dad attending the Cleveland Orchestra for at least 60 years. His love of arts extending to theater and buying art, as together my parents had a virtual museum. And of course, you could find Dad cruising and smiling all around the city in his prized possession, Clyde, a 1966 Bonneville convertible. Of course, I'm just touching on a few highlights. There's so many more, and I know I need to stop. I've always believed that an enduring legacy... What are you laughing at? Me. Oh, you, what are you doing? And Glenn is up here, by the way, thinking that I wasn't going to be able to get through this, and I'm pretty amazed that I've actually been able to really talk without crying. So my kids lost the bet. So, of course, I'm touching on there's so many more highlights. I've always believed that an enduring legacy is not necessarily how your kids turn out, but how the grandchildren choose to live life. Dad was so proud that you grandchildren had or will have your b'nai mitzvahs to reflect your commitment to Judaism. But what I found remarkable is that the 6 of you, really all of you, love adventure, love travel, skiing or snowboarding, and water skiing, even a bit of gardening, all traits, not to mention being passionate and caring people. All traits that certainly, in part at least, can be traced back to Grandpa's enthusiasm for life. When we were talking in the final days about dying with Dad, we just discussed a whole bunch of things. He was a bit worried about dying. What bugged him was kind of FOMO, that's fear of missing out, and that he was going to miss all of us. I assured him, here I'll cry, that it will be us that misses him, When he dies, he probably won't really have feelings of missing folks any longer. He also decided that he will reveal himself as a seagull. So when you see a seagull wherever you may be, think of Norm checking in and saying hello.
Norman's brother, David.
I'd like to thank Rabbi Eric. You said it all. I don't know if I can add anything to it, but I'll try. Everybody knew Brother Norman as Norman. I didn't call him Norman all through his days. His name was Sonny. And why Sonny? He always smiled. He was a happy little boy. And I have called Brother Norman every day for many years. And we have a special rapport together. I'll go up here and say a couple words. Everybody said so many nice words about him. But I have some. He wasn't always a good boy. Before I start, I remember one thing. My father, Max, brought home a brand new car, and Brother Norman took a gallon of white paint and went around the car and painted the car. My dad did not reprimand him. He explained to him what he did wrong. But he wasn't always a good boy. Oh, Brother Norman. My dear brother Norman, we grew up together on a large farm out of Elyria. You took the city and I took the country road. We talked about every day for many years, remembering the family farm days. One thing we did, we planted 5,000 tomato plants back in those days and shipped them to the stores. But what happened? We got into a tomato fight and threw tomatoes at each other. We had 5,000 plants, so there were plenty of rotten tomatoes to throw to each other. And we really threw them at each other, and we took each other after the tomato fight, put our arms around each other, and laughed about it. Norman was a drum major at high school. All the girls liked him very well, and he could twirl that baton very well. And he was well known for being a drum major. At the farm, when we grew up, we rode horses and ponies together for many years. We had a great time. My brother Norman, entered the Navy, which was said in World War II, enlisted as a young man, very patriotic, and he landed up in Japanese territory, and I think he fell in Yokohama Bay, but someone saved him. A gentleman in all ways. Norman was a gentleman in all ways. Always dressed nicely, courteous, and he was good to me, and I was good to him. I love my brother very much. He will be sadly missed by me, his family, and friends. I want to mention his wife, Dolly, has been a wonderful sister-in-law to me, and I hope I've been that way to her. We were a close-knit family, all the children, grandchildren. We were always together, and we will never forget Brother Norman. I'll miss him, but I have some fond memories of my brother. Dolly, you've been a great sister-in-law. Took care of my brother for all those years, and he wasn't easy to handle, really. The cycle of life goes on. Best thing you can do is to keep your health and family. I don't have any further statements to make. The rabbi said it all, and Eric said more than all. That half hour turned into an hour, Eric, but that's all right. Yeah, excuse me. I'll miss him. Sonny boy. He's always good to me. David. What did I do? Oh, that's mine. I'm not used to wearing a mask way out in the country. We're 50 miles apart. All right. My brother Norman.
Now we want to call on Norman's nephew, Thomas, and his niece, Sue.
I love my uncles. That's for sure. Good afternoon. I'm Sue Bram Koletsky, daughter of Sarah Sigel and Hyman Bram, granddaughter of Ruth Lesnick and Max Sigel. Norman was my dear mother's beloved little brother, along with their baby brother David. You can tell they had a lot of fun. I say this because family and relationships were so important to my uncle, and we all felt so lucky to have Uncle Norman in our lives. Just a few weeks ago, via FaceTime, he met my just-born newest grandson, his newest great-great-nephew, Michael, son of Matthew and Jessica, just to bring all of us up to date with the family. And he was so happy to meet Michael. When he was little, he was called Sonny by his family. I realized that this was a loving nickname for a son, but I felt that he had this name because he had the warmth of his son. He was extremely special. He created a warm atmosphere of comfort and acceptance. He was present for you. He had endless energy. When he was with you, there was fun, adventure, and of course the sound of that signature cracking up laugh. So great. Being an only child, Uncle Norman was kind of like a big brother to me. I was the flower girl in their beautiful wedding 62 years ago, and I fell in love with my Aunt Dolly then, wearing her soft white velvet gown. I still remember my incredibly sharply dressed, handsome uncle's joy and his huge grin as he was dancing and overjoyed with happiness that he had found his soulmate. As has been said, their anniversary coincides with Thanksgiving, and for many years my husband Richard and our family celebrated together in their home. That was so welcoming and a love fest for our family. It was a time when my children, Daniel, Matthew, and Rachel, and my cousins and their children bonded over delicious family recipes, stuffing themselves, and playing games. Of course, watching my uncle carve the turkey was the main event, which he did with enthusiasm and great skill. Then family, friends came over, and dessert. I'm sure there was vodka in there somewhere. Uncle Norman and Aunt Dolly were a terrific team. Many times on the phone, I didn't really know who I called, since both of them were talking to me and with each other. Their enthusiasm for life was contagious. My uncle had dear friends of all ages because he was caring, loving, genuine, and sincere. My friends knew and love Aunt Dolly and Uncle Norman. My kids' friends know and love Aunt Dolly and Uncle Norman because they were there. They were involved with their lives and they shared experiences together. talking on the back patio, cheering at hockey games, teaching everyone how to water ski, going on the boat, ice cream runs with Clyde, a warm hug, a phone call ending in, "Okay, my dear." It was his passion to ask you about you, really about you. My uncle was an accomplished businessman and traveled with Aunt Dolly to Japan, entrusting me to watch teenagers Eric and Glenn. Of course, we had a great time and couldn't wait to hear about where they had been and what they had seen and brought back. His keen interest in exploring and travel had a great influence on me, and I thank him for opening my worldview and my zest for travel. I will always cherish our fabulous trip to Amsterdam for our cousins Sarit and Eric's wedding and our wonderful family time together. It's pretty crazy. Although my uncle traveled the world, he embraced life wherever he was. He had a wonderful eye and interest in art and beauty. He designed and grew beautiful flowers in his backyard garden, especially dahlias. He photographed them as well. And of course, he shared the flowers and photographs with his friends and family. He was a sharer. He was a giver. He was always available, willing to help, anytime, any place, anywhere. He listened carefully and with great empathy and offered his thoughts honestly and sincerely. He stands as an example of a life well lived. He lived a fabulous life. He leaves a legacy of love, fun, and kindness that is in my heart forever. Uncle Norman, your warmth will always be with me and the ones you loved and the so many that loved you.
So I'm nephew Thomas, son of David. Every man's life ends the same way. It is not only the details of how he lived and how he died that distinguish one man from another. These are the words of Ernest Hemingway, and how true they are. We're gathered here today not to mourn, but to celebrate the extraordinary life of Norman Sigel, the son of Eastern European Jewish immigrants. Uncle Norman lived his life to the fullest. I was fortunate to have had Norman Sigel as my uncle. I'm also fortunate to have his warm, vivacious, caring, and loving wife, Dolly, as my aunt. Thanks to both Uncle Norman and Aunt Dolly, I have two wonderful cousins, Eric and Glenn. I have vivid childhood memories of Uncle Norman. Early on at the farm in Elyria, and later either at the farm in Homerville or at the home in Shaker Heights. There were many family gatherings over the years, all filled with love, laughter, delicious meals, and a special bond that one rarely sees in families today. In short, Uncle Norman always showed a genuine interest and concern for everybody. When I returned from my stint in Prague and was looking for work stateside, Uncle Norman graciously allowed me to use his office and let me stay with him and Aunt Dolly for extended periods of time. When I was based in Toledo and Cincinnati, it was always a treat to see Uncle Norman when he was in town for business. Thanks to the telephone and most recently FaceTime, over the years we always stayed in touch and enjoyed engaging conversations. I could go on and on. Uncle Norman, you lived 94 wonderful years. Sorry. Your memory will live on in the hearts of all who loved you dearly. I certainly will cherish all of the special moments we had over the years. Rest in peace, dear Uncle. Sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Okay.
Now I'd like to call on two of Norman's grandchildren, Mark and Max.
Thank you. My grandfather lived a long and fantastic life. I only wish that I could have spent more than 22 years getting to know him. He was an extremely kind-hearted man. You could get a sense of how he cared for others by looking at his flower garden. There was no one I know who was more passionate about their garden. He nurtured those flowers and created one of the most beautiful yards I've ever seen. My brothers and I remember playing in the backyard of the Warrington house and looking into the fish pond. Every summer, we were able to pick out a fish and feed them whenever we were over at Grandma and Grandpa's. The only rule was not to crush any of the flowers. Grandpa was always happy to show us around the garden and spend time with us during those hot summer days. You could see his passion for gardening in my father, especially with the dahlias, who inherited Grandpa's green thumb. We're yet to see if my brothers and I are lucky enough to have it too. When it came to sporting events or band concerts, Grandpa was always in attendance. Every time we stepped onto the ice or the soccer field, we could always look to the stands and see Grandpa cheering us on. For hockey games, he was always dressed in his brown leather jacket and special cap with his colorful scarf wrapped around his neck. He would chat with everyone, old and young. Every home game, without fail, we could count on Grandpa giving us his support. Even after games he couldn't attend, we got a call from him to talk about how the game went. His support was an ever-present force in our lives. Grandpa's fashion didn't end at our sporting events. He was always the most dapper man in the room. Whether sporting a bright shirt or a classy sweater at a family dinner, despite the risk of spots that Grandma would have to clean, or wearing a blazer with his pocket watch for more fancy affairs, Grandpa was always stylish. It seemed like he never left the house without his boat shoes either. He refused to wear sweatpants even when Grandma begged him to. His classy attire was always an inspiration for us to look and feel our best. Grandpa drastically changed the outlook of our summers when he purchased his first boat over 40 years ago. Now summer weekends revolve around the family boating schedule. Grandpa was the biggest fan of being on the water. He loved to swim with our purple pool noodles, and he loved water skiing and raised two excellent skiers. And now he has grandchildren who love to water ski as well. As a testament to his youthfulness and strength, we watched Grandpa water ski at 80 years old. We hope that we can continue this family tradition of boating into our adulthood. Most of all, our brothers and I cherish the memories when Grandpa would pop over to our house just to say hello or admire the yard work. Back in the day, he used to drive over Clyde the convertible and take us and our friends for rides around the neighborhood. When the world shut down, we would walk downstairs and see Grandpa sitting on our patio enjoying the weather, perfectly content to just appreciate our garden in the warm sun. He would pull up our driveway with a large smile and greet us with, "Who's that handsome boy?" There's no one else I know who exuded joy like Grandpa in such a seemingly normal situation. The joy to see people was such a central part of Grandpa's personality, and I think it's what led him to live such an amazing life surrounded by amazing people. Grandpa's joy to see us was contagious, and he was always an energizing presence. He was the only grandfather that we ever got the chance to know. He serves as an excellent role model for life and relationships. His humor, his energy, and his overall happiness are all great aspirations for my brothers, myself, and all of his grandchildren. Seeing such a strong marriage between him and my grandmother helped us learn about true love and support. It's clear that he passed these values down to my father and uncle. We could see Grandpa and my dad when he's interacting with friends, family, and making conversation with any stranger. When we think of Grandpa, we hope to remember how he genuinely cared for others, his infectious energy, and most of all, his wittiness up until the very end. As we've grown older, we've realized how he positively impacted so many people and had such a large, caring network of friends and family. It's clear that he was a large part of so many people's lives, and as his grandchildren, we can only hope to live up to his legacy and create relationships as meaningful as his. Hopefully, Grandpa is waiting for us on the white sand beach of Treasure Key with a vodka on the rocks in his hand. Thank you.
O God of life, amid the ceaseless tides of change which sweep away the generations, your love remains to comfort us and to give us hope. Around us are life and death, decay and renewal, the flowing rhythm that all things obey. Our life is a dance to a song that we cannot hear. Its melody courses through us for a little while, then it seems to cease. Whence the melody and whither does it go? In darkness as in light, we turn to you, the source of life and the answer to all of life's mysteries. Will you please rise now for the El Mole Rachamim? El Mole Rachamim, Shochein Bam Romim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kadoshim Utahorim Kazohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Nachum Ben Mordechai Vorut, Shehalach LaOlamo, Bala Rachamim Yastireo B'Seter Ganafav LaOlamim, V'Yitzror B'Tzra HaChayim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato V'Yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Nomar Amen. Eternal God, compassionate Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Norman Sigel, our loved one who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say together, Amen. You may be seated. This concludes our service, which will continue at the Hillcrest Cemetery. I'm sure that you all agree that we have heard powerful, moving accolades, celebrations of Norman's life from family members. I hope that you all who are gathered here with us today recognize that your presence is another tribute to Norman and great comfort to the family. Thank you so much for being here.
Turn towards the hearse.
people of the United States, it's my honor to present you a flag to pay tribute to your husband's service. And to your parents, please. Those who are going to the cemetery, please return directly to your car, put on your headlights, and